Communities usually remained independent of each other, unlike the situation in lowland Denmark. By 800, 30 small kingdoms existed in Norway. The Vikings founded several kingdoms and earldoms in Europe, unified into larger kingdoms during the Viking Age. The sea was the easiest way of communication between the Viking kingdoms and the outside world. In the 8th century, they began to build ships of war and send them on raiding expeditions, which started the Viking Age. The Viking Age, circa 793–1066 AD, is the period during the Middle Ages when Norsemen known as Vikings undertook large-scale raiding, colonizing, conquest and trading throughout Europe and North America, in Newfoundland. They settled in the British Isles, Ireland, the Faroe Islands, Iceland, Greenland, Normandy, the Baltic coast, and along the trade routes in Eastern Europe, where they were known as Varangians. Many theories are posited for the cause of the Viking invasions. The will to explore likely played a major role. At the time, England, Wales, and Ireland were vulnerable to attack, being divided into many different warring kingdoms in a state of internal disarray. Technological advance like the use of iron, tension caused by Frankish expansion to the south of Scandinavia might be other causes. According to the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, Viking raiders struck England in 793 and raided Lindisfarne, the monastery that held St. Cuthbert's relics, killing the monks and capturing the valuables. The raid marked the beginning of the Viking Age of invasion. While the initial raiding groups were small, a great amount of planning is believed to have been involved. The following year, the great heathen army, led by brothers Ivar the Boneless, Halfdan, and Ubba, arrived in East Anglia. They proceeded to cross England into Northumbria and captured York, establishing a Viking community in Jorvik, where some settled as farmers and craftsmen. Most of the English kingdoms, being in turmoil, could not stand against the Vikings. By 870, the Great Summer Army arrived in England, and aided by combined Viking forces, raided much of England until 871, when they planned an invasion of Wessex. Alfred of Wessex and his successors continued to drive back the Viking frontier and take York. A new wave of Vikings appeared in England in 947, when Eric Bloodaxe captured York. In 1003, the Danish king Sweyn Forkbeard started a series of raids against England, culminating in a full-scale invasion that led to Sweyn being crowned King of England in 1013. Sweyn was also King of Denmark and parts of Norway at this time. Harald Harefoot became King of England, and Viking rule of England ceased. The Viking presence declined until 1066, when they lost their final battle with the English at Stamford Bridge. This is often taken as the end of the Viking Age. 19 days later, the Normans, themselves descendants of Norsemen, invaded England and defeated the weakened English army at the Battle of Hastings. In 860, according to the account by the Norman monk Dudo of St. Quentin, a Viking fleet, probably under Björn Ironside and Hastein, landed at the Ligurian port of Luni and sacked the city. The Vikings then moved to Pisa and then, following the river upstream, to Fiesole above Florence. Many Anglo-Danish and Varangian mercenaries fought in southern Italy, including Harald Hardrada and William de Hauteville, who conquered parts of Sicily between 1038 and 1040. Runestones were raised in memory of warriors who died in Langbardaland, land of the Lombards, the Old Norse name for southern Italy. The well-known Harald Hardrada would also serve the Byzantine emperor in Palestine, as well as raiding North Africa, the Middle East as far east as Armenia, and the island of Sicily in the 11th century, as recounted in his saga in Snorri Sturluson's Heimskringla. Evidence of Norse ventures into Arabia and Central Asia can be found in runestones erected in Scandinavia by the relatives of fallen Viking adventurers. Meanwhile, in the eastern Mediterranean, the Norse, referred to as Rus, were viewed more as merchant warriors who were primarily associated with trade and business. Other Vikings continued westward, thereafter disappearing from history. In about 986, the Norwegian Vikings Bjarni Herjolfsson, Leif Erikson, and Thorfinnr Karlsefni from Greenland reached North America over 500 years before Christopher Columbus, and they attempted to settle the land they called Vinland. They created a small settlement on the northern peninsula of present-day Newfoundland, near Lance Meadows. Conflict with indigenous peoples and lack of support from Greenland brought the Vinland colony to an end within a few years. The archaeological remains are now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The role the Vikings played in the European social and cultural development should actually be given further attention and merit. Ragnar Lodbrok, or Lothbrok, is a historically dubious legendary Viking hero, as well as, according to Saxo Grammaticus Gesta Danorum, a legendary Danish and Swedish king. According to the traditional literature, Ragnar Lodbrok distinguished himself by many raids against the British Isles and the Holy Roman Empire during the 9th century. Rollo was a Viking who became the first ruler of Normandy, a region in northern France. He emerged as the outstanding warrior among the Norsemen who had secured a permanent foothold on Frankish soil in the valley of the Lower Seine. After the siege of Chartres in 911, Charles the Simple, the king of West Francia, ceded them lands between the mouth of the Seine and what is now Rouen in exchange for Rollo agreeing to end his brigandage and provide the Franks with protection against future Viking raids. Rollo is first recorded as the leader of these Viking settlers in a charter of 918, and he continued to reign over the region of Normandy until at least 928. Aethelflaed, Lady of the Mercians, was the eldest daughter of Alfred the Great, king of the Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Wessex. Aethelflaed was born around 870, at the height of the Viking invasions of England. Her succession is considered the only case of a female ruler of a kingdom in Anglo-Saxon history and one of the most unique events in early medieval history. Aethelflaed immediately turned to her brother Edward for support. Edward, later Edward the Elder, had succeeded Alfred the Great as King of Wessex in 899. And legend has it that both brother and sister shared their father's ideal of a united England. They understood that the old and fragmented Anglo-Saxon kingdoms could not drive back the Vikings alone, and so as soon as Aethelflaed succeeded to the throne, she freely handed both Oxford and London over to Wessex for their own protection. Over the following year, this brother-sister alliance continued to drive the Danes out of central and southern England.